truck. Helpful, obedient, willing, and safe.
It may have looked innocent, but the forklift truck was to become a focus of industrial strife between management and their workers. In 1959, the forklift played the unlikely villain in the feature film I'm All Right, Jack.
I must say, it looks a jolly efficient little job. Must be great fun driving it.
Yes, well, all you've got to worry about is to remember to plug in here at night when you knock off work, so the batteries are fully charged when you come in the morning.
Terrific. It's so simple. Man-hours saved must be colossal.
Yes, well, we're on a fixed bonus system, so there's no need to go flogging your guts out.
Oh, I dare say, but well, after all, one of these trucks must be able to do the work of a dozen men.
British industry once relied on men, not machines, to cart, carry, shift and hum. This Lister auto truck changed all that.
In 1926, a man named George Christ thought up this idea of manufacturing a unit that everything turned on its own wheels, being able to maneuver it in very small spaces. The railway stations, having narrow platforms, he was able to turn it, more or less, turn it on a sixpence. He arranged this with these rollers and the ability to turn it completely around. As you can see, it's got a hydraulic lift on it, which enables it to go in under and pick up and transfer it where it wants to go. It was really the forerunner of what we call the forklift truck. I think the forklift truck was designed on this principle.
Lister made a basic machine for under £100. Around 3,000 versions were tailor-made for different industries. This one is carrying a ton of 20-foot timber. Some were built for narrow-gauge rail, and there was even this off-roader with a one-track drive.
Okay, Simon, let's get her started. Okay.
This is a 1950s diesel version driven by Gordon Clue's grandson, Simon.
He fetches and carries and puts up with my temper at times and really loves to drive the machines at rallies. I think he's 11 now and he's been doing it for the last 5 years.
The diesel auto truck had a lowered centre of gravity and improved controls. Simon tow starts his grandfather's less reliable petrol engine version.
The petrol trucks, in actual fact, they were not so reliable as the diesel turned out to be in later years. I think the main problem with this model was the magneto gave trouble.
By 1938, 10,000 auto trucks had been built and sold. Many were exported, and production continued until 1973. Three-wheeled auto trucks were ideal for fetching and carrying light loads in the confined spaces of yards, railways and docks. For heavier hauling, tractor-trailer units were needed, like this one working at Derby Locomotive Works. Though it looks a bit like Noddy's car, the Model A, seen here showing off for potential customers without its driver, was the first really successful product made by the new post-war Lansing Bagnall company.
This is a Lansing Bagnall Model A, designed in 1946, 47. And this was built when Lancing Bagnall were at Isleworth. And the story goes that they designed this by chalking an outline on the floor, and when it looked right, they decided that was the way they'd go. And as one of the designers also designed the Lancing Bagnall Pegasus badge, which is a very important part of our company then. It was in production for 20 years. It was exported all over the world, which was good in those days, because of its reliability and strength. And it was easy to drive, anybody could drive it. In fact, there's still many working today, if you know where to find them. Obviously started them thinking of mechanical handling, and it progressed from there, really, because once you've got stuff, goods and trailers, you have to get it off trailers. So you need something apart from men to do it.
Ferrying bombs, even over this short distance, isn't our idea of a regular job.
That something apart from men was the forklift truck.
The accepted view is that the first fork trucks which were seen by any Europeans were in North Africa. And from that early beginning, British officers in North Africa and people in this country were first introduced to the idea of fork trucks handling a lot of goods in a unit load.
This 1943 training film shows how far America had progressed with a system that relied on a dozen pieces of cheap wood nailed together, the pallet.
To move supplies quickly from contractor to consumer, unnecessary handling must be eliminated. Unit loads made up of many small containers or a quantity of a material can reduce handling to a minimum. Once the load is stacked on the pallet, it remains as a unit until the individual cartons are distributed to the consumer. One operator can quickly transport the palletized unit loads direct to freight cars.
The basis of this new revolution of materials handling in the idea of a unit load on a pallet being a large wooden platform which will have two surfaces, so that the forks of a fork truck can enter between those two surfaces and pick up this load, and not only move it away, but in fact stack that load on top of another load, and therefore economise considerably on floor area required for storing goods.
Companies had to get product off the ground and into the air, because one of the fascinating aspects even today is, although you pay rates for your buildings, you don't actually pay rates for using the cube. So there was a tremendous case for getting material off the floor and into the air, and pallets and forklifts was that solution.
Britain's first fork truck evolved from a machine that couldn't move at all. This wartime fire pump was powered by a Coventry Climax engine. Once the fires of war were extinguished, surplus engines needed a new use. Named after Coventry's most famous nude, the petite Godiva fire pump that delivered water was transformed into the voluptuous Godiva forklift that delivered goods. Fork trucks were a brand new idea and needed energetic selling by salesmen like Bill Phipps.
I never went past a barren-looking shack without going in it to see whether or not it had fork truck possibilities. Once you went in there to sell him a forklift truck and a pallet system, you didn't have to sell it. Once he saw what it could do, he did it. The customers were selling them for themselves.
Trucks like the ET199 Godiva were selling themselves because their large wheels, pneumatic tyres and robust build made them ideal for Britain's potholed warehouse yards. At about the same price as a Jaguar, the mechanical muscles of forklift trucks were not cheap, but human muscle was getting more expensive.
Building costs were going up, heating costs were going up, labour costs were going up, and everything was in fact offering a quicker payback if in fact you could do more with your equipment.
The Coventry Climax helped revolutionise handling in yards and lorry loading bays, but their exhaust fumes made them antisocial for indoor work. In warehouses and factories, trucks powered by a clean energy source were needed. By the time of the 1952 Mechanical Handling Exhibition, a mecca for forklift trucks at Olympia, the environmentally friendly electric trucks were established crowd pleasers. For the new company building them, the future was bright.
This ain't the middle of the night. You're a crazy little man. So baby, just sit tight, 'cause you know it is.
The new Seat Cordoba Vario. We've added to our family, so you've got more room for yours. Seat.
From double glazing, crazy paving, everyone's saving for everything they're craving. New car, used car, van that's second-hand, small boys, toy car, tall boys, home bar. Nationwide really knows how to make your money grow. Everyone's saving for rainy days and sunny days. For CDs, TVs, PCs and videos, everything for exercise, all you need for buy-buys, water beds, daughter's beds, all for poster, crockery, cutlery, cooker and toaster, old extension causing tension, holiday on Costa Brava, Costa, lots of saving harder. Number 8 anticipates forthcoming weddings, next door neighbours, wives in labour, university anniversaries, meanwhile mum smiles at a new nursery.
Whoever you are, whatever you want to save for, it pays to decide nationwide.
In spring, the weather is mild. Food is colored with saffron. We are dazzled by gold.
In summer, green gives us energy. We go to the mountains and walk barefoot in the snow. High up, the air is fresh. We eat well.
In winter, our country is a rainbow land. Each color has its own mood. Some intoxicate, others cool you down.
Tonight, share Batak's passion for India.
Today, the power to combat backache and rheumatic pain is available without pills. Ibuleve. Only Ibuleve contains the penetrating power of the Ibuleve formula. The power to help conquer backache without pills. The power to relieve rheumatic pain without pills. Even the power to combat non-serious arthritic pain without pills. Ibuleve Power from pharmacies. The best-selling gel for pain relief without pills.
Otex eardrops disperse earwax and can avoid syringing. Ask your pharmacist for the UK's #1 selling eardrops, Otex.
RAC standard cover with no call-out discount. 0800 77 00 99.
On board this prototype chassis is inventor Freddie Arnott. His pioneering work on electric traction motors for the fledgling Lansing Bagnall Company would make them giants of indoor mechanical handling.
We were concentrating on applications which were inside buildings, inside stores and warehouses and so on.
On board this Model D prototype are elite members of Freddie Arnott's testing team. Arnott's masterstroke was a traction motor which featured regenerative braking. When power was shut off, the motor became a generator, thus returning power to the batteries and providing braking.
It was the combination of Arnott's patented circuit and the realisation that an electric-powered pallet truck could be designed which would replace hundreds, thousands in fact, of hand trucks.
Mr. Hornsby told me his raw materials came in by road, and I noticed that all the unloading was done by hand. With a 5-ton load of ingots, this was a 1.5 hours job.
For the men in smart suits, replacing inefficient hand carts with powered machines was progress. But for the men in boiler suits, it could mean redundancy.
Pretty tough job doing this all the time.
You'll get used to it. We only get about a lorry a day.
The powered pallet truck meant that many more lorries per day could be loaded and unloaded. Lansing Bagnall's Model P was launched in 1948 and was the first powered pallet truck in Britain. For salesman Tony Mosquita, it was that rare thing, a product so good it was a joy to sell.
Well, this machine, in fact, was designed in 1951. And when I joined the company in 57, it quickly became my favourite pallet transporter and remained so through its life. And this truck, in fact, was in production for 40 years. It had many unique features. First of all, it had an infinitely variable speed control. And there were actually 7 speeds, forward and reverse. It had a unique lift. It lifted 6 inches. Now that was very essential because one of the first orders we got was for taking palletized washing powder by rail. Now to enter the rail van from the platform, clearly there was a very sharp slope to be negotiated, and you needed the 6-inch lift to clear the bridging. Now it had other unique features. It incorporated a shunt motor, so that when you traveled, you take your finger off the accelerator, it broke electrically. And that was a very, very safe feature, particularly when it was descending ramps. Finally, this truck went out of production in 1995, 41 years after it was produced.
With marketing firmly centred on saving manpower, Lansing Bagnall rapidly expanded their range through the 1950s.
There is no branch of industry that we know of in which mechanized muscle is not to be found somewhere doing something to relieve men of arduous labor and climbing costs.
Now, this was the space-making breakthrough of the 50s. Designed in 1955-56 for the then Materials Handling Exhibition, the model was called SFR, stand on, because I'm standing, fork, and reach. Reach because the whole of the fork mechanism reaches forward, and I'll show you. Now clearly, in that position, you have a truck that takes up the same room as the pedestrian fork truck, but this truck can actually reach back with the pallet. Now that reach is equivalent to 3 feet, and that is the space that this truck will conserve in a company's warehouse. So basically, this stand-on reach truck can operate and handle a 40 by 48 pallet in an aisle width of just 6 foot 6 inches. And that was a tremendous breakthrough. Fine truck, and it lasted until 1986. And at that time, we were forced to suspend production because the European Truck Directive came out with a number of requirements, some of which stated that the space for an operator had to fulfill a certain floor area. And this truck, sadly, did not meet that requirement. Everybody today has 1.5 and 2 ton reach trucks. So it was a great technical breakthrough for the industry.
The reach trucks saved floor space and evolved into upwardly mobile machines that could exploit the furthest reaches of warehouse space. This 30-foot tall order picker is being tested for stability at full extension. Warehouse racking became designed around the machines. By squeezing their way into the tightest corners, machines were elbowing men out. In an era obsessed by motion efficiency, management welcomed the mechanical handling revolution.
The film I'm All Right, Jack, that epitomized, I think, in an amusing way, but in a very accurate way, the situation that we were seeing in this country.
What are you doing exactly?
Well, I'm shifting these generators from the stores to here for loading up.
You must find this machine saves you a lot of sweat.
Oh, it certainly does.
Pity it can't take more than 1 crate at a time.
Oh, but it can.
There was huge suspicion of these time and motion folk. Time and motion and work-study engineers in the bigger companies was very much the order of the day then.
Was you on loadings yesterday afternoon?
Yes.
So you was there alone, brother?
Yes, I was. Except for the other chap.
I think you ought to know, brothers, that this so-called other chap was in point of fact the new time and motion man.
That's torn. That's hardly.
Well, hold Soapy. Brother Windrush, perhaps you'd care to make a statement about that?
Terribly sorry, but he didn't tell me that. But I wasn't working particularly hard, and I got the job done in half the time.
Windrush, your case will come up tonight before the branch for consideration.
Good. What are you going to do, Katie? Call the drivers out.
Call the drivers out? I tell you, brothers, everybody's coming out.
Britain's docks would be the site of the most bitter battle between men and machines. Loading and unloading ships was still labour-intensive, and even though mechanisation was inevitable, the casually employed dockers were highly sensitive to the threat of unemployment.
Unless we modernised, then we could not meet the new type of traffic that was being carried in ships. Containerisation, palletisation, unit loads, bulk carriers. I mean, don't forget, forklift trucks were there after the war, but they were used for only specific jobs. But where they were introduced for palletisation, it was first introduced in the West India dock by the Port of London Authority, where there was a negotiated agreement. It cut down an 8-ended gang to 3.
It was very clear right from the outset that the dockers were not happy to see mechanisation introduced. They saw it that might have been a threat to jobs. But clearly, if those ports were going to be competitive, that it was necessary to introduce mechanisation. The dockers worked in gangs of 6, 8 or 12, dependent upon the type of product that they were having to handle. And I can even see today those trucks going in, and for a long period of time, until there was a resolvement to the problem, those gangs worked walking behind the forklift with the forklift driver on it.
The gang would get an additional man on a forklift truck, and he would be additional to the gang manning. And it could mean that some of them men may be doing nothing. We weren't Luddites, but what we wanted to find out, what we were going to get from it. We weren't greedy, but we wanted our share. It couldn't be all one way for the ship owner and for the dock owners and the wharfage owners. We set up a modernisation committee in every port throughout the country. And it's really from that we started to modernise, getting men to accept the use of machinery. And it's now concluded that we've got no men but plenty of machines.
Looking like King Kong, this is one of the machines that won Britain's dockside battle. The Valmet Reach Stacker heaves containerised loads weighing up to 40 tonnes around the deep-water dock of Thamesport on the Isle of Grain. Ship's cargo is now handled by an entirely different type of docker.
This is a dream toy. This is what every grown-up kid should have, is a set like this to play with. 200-ton cranes, moving at high speed, and all controlled by software.
With its driverless gantry cranes and swipe card controlled operations, people now play the bit parts in physical handling at Thamesport.
We have a very peculiar recruitment system. First of all, we have insisted that no one with port experience need apply, because after all, this is a warehouse, not a port.
"30 years ago, it took 12 days for 200 men to unload a typical ship's cargo. Today, twice as much cargo is handled in less than 12 hours by 50 men.
When we first made it known to the world that we were going to build an automated port, people were convinced that we had lost our minds.
Minds haven't been lost, but jobs have. And this is the inevitable price of the mechanical handling revolution. Today, everything that we consume is handled by machines like this gigantic 65-ton Caterpillar toplifter, whose roots lie in the humble origins of the forklift truck.
Classic Plant Machinery by Brian Johnson is available from most bookshops. Price £18.99.